what is Wirepoints? I got a chance to check it out prior to the interview. It's a very interesting spot, one that's kind of rare. It is reminiscent a little bit of Drudge Report in the fact that you have so much on there and stuff that I don't normally see in other places. I mean that in a complimentary way. Yeah. What is Wirepoints?
So, it started a few years back. My partner, Mark Glennon, he was frustrated that the news wasn't being covered properly by any of the major media. And he started aggregating other news that other people had written that actually told the truth, or at least told partial truth. And he started aggregating news. Then he got more frustrated, and he said he started writing some pieces to try to tell the truth about what was happening. I was working at another group, and we decided to hook up and say, hey, we got to tell the truth. We're not political. We think both sides are complicit in the failure in Illinois. It's been a big joint venture between Republicans and Democrats. And so we got together and we started writing and providing the data. I'm a pretty data obsessed guy. And so if we make a claim, we want to make sure that the data is right behind it so people can see why we're saying it and what we're saying, and they can, take us on, which is, we want a good, healthy debate. But I think a key differentiating feature, in addition to the data, is we're going to tell it just like it is. We're not worried about whether we upset a Republican or a Democrat. We don't care. What we want to do is make sure that people understand what the truth is. And that COVID allowed us to really kind of show off our work, because it allowed us to grab the data and say, the government's not telling you this. Here's what you should know.
So give me an example. What did you guys uncover that the government was saying one thing and you guys discovered something else?
Well, right off the bat, we started, the whole notion in Illinois was that our government was going to be run by the Governor Pritzker, with executive orders. And, and of course, the fear in Illinois was that is all about cases. You only heard about cases. You never heard about deaths and hospitalizations. Or I should say differently, they use cases to scare you and invoke fear. And so we started saying, we didn't even report cases on Wirepoints. We created our own alternative data using government data and started reporting it, but showing it in a way that we thought was the way you should see it. And we led with hospitalizations and we led with deaths. And we didn't even include cases in our data for a long time because we said that was not the right kind of data. And, wow, people loved it. Our volumes just went through the roof. Then we challenged Governor Pritzker why he wasn't publishing antibody data. This was data that other states had started to publish, and the government wouldn't publish it. Then we took them on other data, like why aren't they showing they actually weren't reporting hospitalizations, they weren't reporting several pieces of data. We challenged them. We FOIA'd for it. We started reporting the data, which forced the government to then report the data. So, people were just happy to see that there was an alternate site that said, wait a minute, think about it this way. And of course, that led us into talking about school openings and all that, which, people really appreciated the data we put out.
And what was your data telling people that they didn't understand prior to having that data? Well,
let's take the example of Chicago Public Schools, right? Massive school system, shut down March of last year and did not reopen until just a few weeks ago. So basically you had something that's, 80-something% minority, right? So here you have a class of children who are already massively behind with learning gaps, huge learning gaps, which mean in the future, huge earning gaps, right? When they're older. They're being kept out of school. And a big part of that was the fear that was being invoked about COVID. And, a few months ago, we took the data and we showed the number of kids that were under the age of 18 that had died in Chicago from COVID. And I can't remember the numbers now because it's at the time, but it's either 2 kids or 4 kids under the age of 18 that had died of COVID. And then we showed the number of kids that had died from under the age of 18 from gunshots. And it was something like 50. And later became 90. It became 8 deaths of COVID versus 90 deaths, or 100 deaths is actually 100 deaths from gunshots. We said there's much more risk of the kids not being in the classroom and being out in the streets. Let's get them back into the classroom. And that's the kind of stuff, right? You got to show the numbers and put some perspective on it.
So, I mean, that is one of those things that's jarring to the point of like a dark dystopia, right? That's like, who on earth would have first guessed that, and then 2. How did people respond as you put that out there? Certainly your viewers started to like it, but then you start putting that up in front of people and making them look at what they're doing. Did that impact them?
Well, it was hard to impact Chicago. It's such a big place and it's so politicized. But yeah, it had an impact. And I think, we're always breaking the narrative, the narrative that the governors always wanted to use, which is, shut down, lockdowns. I think we had much more impact in the suburbs because, there you had, and you're talking about the Chicago suburbs where you have wealthy school districts, including where I am. They didn't want to open up, but they didn't want to open up much. And so we started showing all the data of, well, let's look at the people 50 and under who have died from COVID. And if they didn't have comorbidities, it was a teeny number. And so these unions, the teachers' unions, were using their huge power to keep schools closed. And we just kept hammering the data. No children are dying. The number of teachers who might be under the age of 50 is a very small number. And then we also showed, well, don't forget, a majority of teachers, like 77% of the teachers in the school district I'm at, are under the age of 50. You can be in the classroom. You can manage this. And of course, you start showing data on the private schools who are open all the time. And they weren't having, there's no transmission. So we started reporting on the lack of transmission, all those things. If you report the facts and the data and present them in a fair, honest, and in a non-hyperbolic way, it can go a long way to changing minds and getting buy-in. And I think we had a big impact on getting schools open in the suburbs.
How did people find out about Wirepoints? One of the interesting things that I think COVID and the latest election have shown is that there are certain perspectives that even if all they're doing is showing, hey, this is data, hey, this is us going to a physical location where they said there were voters coming from and now they're not here, those people are getting booted off of social media and I would guess probably throttled pretty significantly prior to that. So how in the world did you find an audience?
Well, I say one of the things we've done, and I think it's a sad part of our, what do you want to call it, battles in the culture battle we're having, is that I think we can win the arguments based on the facts and logic and reason. And I'm highly against the hyperbolic name calling, all that. I don't like any of that. So we really avoid it, because once you do that, then you're just like everybody else, right? And so we're direct. We're certainly direct. We certainly mean what we say and say what we mean, but we don't do it in a way that tries to put you down or calls you stupid. We're just putting the facts out there. And, and you can, if you have good data behind you, at least you can have a decent discussion, right? You can disagree on the data some and all that, but we just, we were a small team through COVID. We had 3 people and we worked our butts off, but we're good at taking the data. We're good at describing it. And we worked hard to just get it out into Facebook and Twitter. And, it's hard work. We didn't spend any money to promote it. We just, tried our best to get it out there. But I think people liked it. And so far, so good.
Thanks for checking out this podcast short. If you like this interview, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and hit that bell so you always get notified about this podcast. And if you're really interested in conversations like this, you may want to consider joining the Articulate Ventures Network. To find out more, go to network.articulate.ventures.